friends. I'm your host, Dr. Dave Layton, and thank you for joining me in our journey to hope. It is my desire through this podcast to bring you information about how to discover, sustain, or perhaps regain hope. In this episode, I'm speaking with a new friend from far, far away and even into the future. It's Abi King. Abi lives in New Zealand, so they're a day ahead of us on the international date line. So that's why I say she's in the future. I came across Abi through a shared podcast hosting service, and I was fascinated with her podcast and with her story, and so I was excited that she's a guest on my show. Well, hello, Abi.
Hi, David. How are you?
I am doing great, and thank you so much for your time, precious gift, and you've given that.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. That's awesome.
Well, again, the honor is mine. I'd like to start with you telling the audience a little bit about yourself, and then let's talk a little bit about your podcast.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, my name's Abby, and I am living in New Zealand now, but I'm originally from the UK. I've been in New Zealand since 2005. I am now a single mum with three teenage girls. So life is pretty hectic. But yeah, I'm 3 years sober from alcohol and or 3+ years now. And I started this podcast only a few weeks ago. So it's very, very early. I think episode 6 is coming
You're
out this
doing
Sunday. So
you're doing wonderful. I've listened to some of your episodes, and it's wonderful.
thank you. Thank you. I'm really enjoying it. So, yeah, I started this podcast. So my podcast is called The Sober Connection, and it's really just it's a mixture of tips and tricks for helping people get and remain sober. And then also every other week I have guest interviews where I'll interview somebody that's kind of gone through the same process as me. So from the depths of alcoholism and kind of gone through the whole process of getting sober and looking towards the future and just showing people that yeah, it is possible, because I know, from personal experience that when you're in that depth of alcohol, when you're struggling with addiction and you can't see a way out, you see all these people that are, a few years down the line and they've remained sober, and you just can't see that it is ever going to be possible for you. And I just want to show people that it absolutely can be possible. So yeah, there's the reason it's called The Sober Connection is because there's a quote which says the opposite of addiction is connection. Actually, I'll find it for you. I found it here. Hang on, my phone's. It's by a guy called Johann Hari, and it's the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's human connection. And so for me, I feel like that's really important, because I really, really leaned on human connection while I was getting sober, and it's one of the biggest things that helped me with my sobriety. Yeah, just that feeling of not being alone is really, really important to me. So hoping that people will actually listen to my story and other people's stories and realize that, yeah, staying connected and staying around people that have been through that experience is what's important. It's what's going to get you through. So, yeah.
Yeah, I um, I listened to the part. I didn't listen to all of it, but I listened to part of the podcast, not this current episode, the one before, and you made that statement talking about suicide, that no one is alone. I, I bang that drum every chance I get, because when you're isolated or feel it, you feel like you're alone, and truly you're not. So connection. So the opposite of addiction is connection. Is that what you said?
Yeah. 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 So
Wow.
it's the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, but human connection. Yeah.
Okay.
And I just think it's a really, really important message for people to understand. So, yeah.
I like that. I've never heard that. That's great. By the way, I want to bounce out of this real quick. Um, you said you have three daughters.
I do. Yes. For
Okay.
my sins.
Well,
Yeah.
I understand that. My wife and I had four daughters,
Oh,
and we
wow.
now will now have 9 granddaughters. So
Oh,
I,
wow.
I understand when you said it's kind of hectic. Yes, I understand.
Yeah, I'm sure
Okay.
you do. Have to pick your
Yeah.
brain for some tips.
Okay. So um, you named your podcast the Sober Connection.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that based on that idea that uh, the opposite of addiction is connection? Is that kind of where that came from?
Yeah, kind of. I when I first got sober, so for me, my journey was that it took me 4 years of trying to get sober. So it was a very, very long process. And then when I finally had my last hangover, about 80 days in, I decided to set up an Instagram page for myself to stay accountable. It wasn't more than that. I would just post every day, and I found that that kind of helped me sort of stay, because I knew that I'd have to post each day, and I couldn't deal with the thought that I would have to tell people that I'd gone back to drinking. So it kept me sober. And I started getting messages from people, and my message was inspiring them, and they had decided to give it a go, and I thought that that was really amazing because that's not what I'd set the account up for, but it was really cool that that was a knock-on effect. And then a few of us started doing Instagram lives, and then we started doing Zoom meetings, and I called it the Sober Connection because I wanted people to connect. I spent the 4 years of trying to quit alcohol. I was in a small town in New Zealand, and I was pretty much the only person that didn't drink. And so I really struggled with human connection at that point because nobody around me in real life understood what I was trying to go through. They're all heavy drinkers, drinking daily. They couldn't understand my journey. So I leaned into the online sober community and got my support from that.
Okay.
Being in New Zealand, a lot of my connections were in the UK or in America, Canada, overseas away from New Zealand. And so that connection, again, it was just really, really important to me. And it's what kind of got me through. So yeah, the sober connection sort of ties in with that too, just having that connection with other sober people. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, and please share what you want to or don't want to. I just was curious. I, the only addiction type of addiction that I've ever experienced was smoking, and I know that's way mild considering other things, but nevertheless, there were some things that I recall experiencing. There were certain triggers where it would say, "Okay, I want a cigarette." Uh,
Yeah.
it might be somebody around me. It might be a smell. And by the way, I haven't smoked in I forgot how many years, but um, you can watch an old movie and somebody will smoke and I can feel it. I can taste it. I could pick it up and start smoking right now. It again, that's not my field, but it seems that it changes you physically. And so
Yeah.
it kind of owns you. I guess I could put it that way. Again, that's
Yeah,
from an
absolutely.
outsider looking in. So
Yeah. 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 No, it definitely does. I think for me, yeah, so in my latest episode, which was released on Sunday, I talk about my story and I sort of
uh-huh.
introduce who I am, and I sort of explain how I got to be a daily drinker, what happened. So I went through an abusive relationship between the age of 17 to about 21, where I was just, yeah, physically and sexually abused
Yeah.
very regularly for that whole period. And
Hmm.
at that age, I'd sort of started drinking. I grew up in the UK, and it was very, very common in the
Hmm.
90s for, in the UK, you started drinking at about 14, 15. So I'd been drinking for a couple of years and dabbling with a few other things that were handed to me. But when I was in this relationship, my escape was to to drink and just to, it kind of numbed the pain, it numbed the reality, and it just kind of got me away from what was actually going on. But obviously 17 to 21 is very formative years, and I didn't realize when I came out of it that this addiction had now become my coping mechanism. So
Well,
throughout my life then it was just that's how I coped with everything. Sadness, sad things, happy things, boring days, fun days, whatever. It was just, I just drank. So, yeah, I think, yeah, it was just kind of what I did, and it's just what I got used to. And I think, when I started to think that maybe it was a bit of, well, I sort of always knew that it was a bit of a problem, to be honest. But when I really started to think about it was just before I turned 40. And one of my daughters said that she didn't like the sound of my voice when I drank. And that just horrified me, and I was really embarrassed. And that's kind of what started. I'd sort of been thinking about quitting for about 6 months before that, but I'd found it too hard. So I just hadn't bothered. And then when she said that, it was the catalyst for me to actually, I
yeah.
need to change. My kids are noticing this is not the parent that I want to be. And so started the process. But actually, in the 4 years of me trying to quit, sometimes every other day would be a day one. Sometimes I could go a few weeks without drinking, and then I'd be back to it. Something would happen. I'd get triggered, like you said, and I wouldn't know how to cope. My coping mechanism would be to grab a drink. So that's what I did. And I had to learn all these new skills, but I actually became a heavier drinker in those 4 years than I'd ever been before. So it was like alcohol was just trying to pull me
Hmm.
back. It knew that it was going to lose me, and it was just trying to hold on to me as much as it could. But in
Wow.
the end, I won the battle. So
Yeah.
I can
I'm
be
glad of
quite
that.
stubborn when I want to be. So it was good.
Yeah. You introduced me to a term in one of the previous podcasts. You talk about a gray area drinker. I had never heard that term before. Um,
Yeah.
Talk about that just a little bit, because I think, as you observed in your discussion about it, there's more people might be in that category than realize that they are.
Yeah, absolutely. So grey area drinking is so you've got on one end of the scale, you've got people that can take it or leave it. They can have a drink, they can go out and have a glass of wine with dinner, but that's it. They're just one glass and they're happy. They can sit on that all night, go home, have a cup of tea, the night's done. Then you've got on the other end of the scale, you've got your alcoholic, alcohol dependent, the classic sort of stereotypical idea that we all have of somebody that's got a really, really serious drinking problem, a couple of bottles of whiskey a day, or, just has lost everything due to their drinking, and then in the middle, so between probably if it was on a scale of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, from 2 to 8, maybe, you've got grey area drinkers. And those are the people that they don't drink all, there's two different options. So there's two different types. So there's the people that can go all week without drinking and then they binge drink. And so they'll have, they could go a few weeks without drinking and then they have an occasion where they just get really, really wasted. They just get really, really drunk and they have a huge, massive quota of alcohol. Or you've got the people that just drink a little bit, but it's every day. So it's a glass of wine with dinner, but every night, or it's beers with the boys after work. If they're working on the trades or, plumbers or whatever, they'll have a box of beer and they'll share that after work and then they'll go home and, so it's every day and it just kind of, it creeps up on you. So for me, I think I was a grey area drinker. I would get the kids off to bed and I'd have a glass of wine and then all of a sudden, oh, I've poured myself another glass of wine and then all of a sudden, oh, the bottle's gone, and then I'm going to the supermarket and I'm buying two bottles of wine instead of one. And that's it, just slowly, slowly, or sometimes not even that slowly, just kind of creeps up. And then you want to kind of realize that you're in this position before you get to the point where you're,
Okay.
yeah, you have actually got a problem, which is where I got to. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So then I understood it better than I thought I understood it. When I hear the term gray area, I think of transitional, and you use the term it kind of creeped up on you. So,
yeah,
okay, good. Wow.
yeah. I
Uh,
think I mean, yeah, it's just a sort of slippery slope. There's a few different analogies. One of them is about there's a plant. I can't remember what the name of the plant is, but it's when the fly flies into it. Is it might be the Venus flytrap maybe, but when a
Okay.
fly kind of flies into it, they can get it's sort of got this kind of like a little bit of a slope going down, and once they fall down, they can't get back out, and it's just
Uh-huh.
very much like that. So at the start, you can kind of creep back out, and you're not too bad, but yeah, you go too far in, and yeah, it's a sort
It's
of a
over.
downward
Okay.
spiral from there,
It's
really.
got its
Yeah.
hold on you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, it-
exactly, exactly.
yeah. And it's a very
Yeah.
difficult thing, even to begin to move away from it. I imagine you experienced perhaps some fear, some lack of confidence that you could do it, especially if you tried and flip back in and try it again.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was drinking from the age of 14. So it's all I'd ever known. And my whole identity was, I mean, it sounds awful to say it, but it's kind of what I did. I didn't really have any other hobbies. Or anything that I did have would sort of circulate around having a drink at the end of it. I'd sort of go to the gym, but then I'd be like, oh, I worked out today. I can have a beer to celebrate. It's kind of really sort
Yeah,
of this backward mentality. But
yeah,
the, 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 it was terrifying to think that I might never be able to drink again because I didn't know what that meant for me as a person. Um, yeah, I mean, my to say that my life has changed since I gave up drinking is just it's just a massive underestimate. Like I can't I left my marriage. I moved towns. I've changed careers. I've done so many things that I never would have imagined that I would have been able to do when I was drinking. My personality is completely different to what I thought it would be. I thought that I was an extrovert. I thought I loved going out and being around people. I don't. I'm very much, I get very overstimulated very quickly and I have to spend a lot of time by myself recharging my
okay.
batteries. And that I didn't know that that's what I would be like. But of course I didn't because from drinking from 14 to, well, what am I now? 44? 44 I stopped drinking. So, that's 30 years of drinking. Um,
Wow,
yeah,
wow.
yeah. So
I'm
it's
glad you
pretty, I
made
mean,
it. I'm glad you
oh,
made it
I am
through
too.
it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, wow. Well, my show is about hope, and it's about helping folks discover, sustain, or regain hope. And what you're doing is you're showing people there is hope. Uh, you know, I'd like to hear your views on hope and how you see your role helping people with that.
Okay, so yeah, I think from my own experience, I had lost all hope when I was in the kind of depths of my drinking. I felt very alone, and I thought. I mean, there's a lot of shame around having a drinking problem, and I don't know about in America, but certainly in New Zealand and Australia and the UK, the drinking culture is pretty messed up, and it's kind of you're the weird one if you don't drink, So there's that kind of mentality. So
Yeah,
if you,
interesting. I'm retired military, and in my early years of the military, smoking and drinking were part of the culture.
yeah,
And
yeah,
finally, that turned around, and it's not now. So I understand what you're saying about it. It just surrounds you. It's all around you.
yeah,
There's more
yeah, it does.
encouragement to drink than to not drink.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if somebody came up to you with, some heroin and said, "Oh, do you want to jack up today?" And you were
Yeah.
like, "No, no, no." People wouldn't, you wouldn't feel like you were the person in the wrong. But somebody comes to you with a bottle of beer and says, "Do you want a beer?" And you say no. It's like, well, especially as a woman, the first thing was, "Are you pregnant?" No, I'm just trying not to try not to kill myself, pretty much.
I
But
would have never
but yes,
made that connection.
so there's a
Okay.
lot of shame. There's a lot of shame. So when you first kind of admit that to yourself, you have to admit it to yourself first that like, yep, there's definitely a problem here. I need to kind of have a look into it. Like I said, when I started quitting, I was very isolated where I was living. And so until I found this sober community, which is incredible, I thought that it was just me and I was very much on my own and I didn't know how I was going to find a way out. I couldn't go to AA meetings, wasn't really my thing anyway, but also the closest one was an hour's drive away and I wasn't going to do that every day. So that wasn't an option. So I was really doing it all by myself. And yeah, I think I just, when I was at the bottom of, I can't do this, I can't do this, I literally had no hope. And then you'd see all these people once I got involved in the sober community online that, oh my, this person's just celebrated 100 days or this person celebrated 1,000 days, like 1,000 days, what? Like that's incredible. But, everybody celebrated every single milestone and that gives you hope. And so everybody in the sober community online has been where you have been. So yeah, there's no such thing as failure in that instance because everybody's like, yep, okay, it's not okay, you've drunk again, that's all right. We've all been there, there's no judgment, there's no nobody makes you feel bad, there's no shame. So I think once I found that, I started getting hope that this could be me down the track and I will get there. So yeah, I think hope, you've got to hold on to it. Otherwise you'll just give up. And
Yeah.
if you want something so badly, then you just can't give up. That's the whole point. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to keep
Yeah.
trying. So
It is
yeah,
a kind of accountability to yourself and then to other folks that are out there that know you're making this effort. They kind of hold each other accountable. And I don't mean that in a negative
absolutely.
way where they're going to be judgmental, but accountable in I understand I'm going to help you with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Something else.
I've never had any judgment from anybody that's tried to
Yeah.
get sober because we've all struggled. We've all been there, and you see those success stories, and even people will be, I just 5 days sober, and everyone's like, yes, and
Yeah.
they're saying it's only 5 days, and it's like it's not only 5 days. That's incredible. That's amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really cool. Yeah,
Um, we talk about this a lot with people. When somebody's been through something such as you're doing now, you just feel compelled to turn around and help somebody else that's going through it.
yeah,
And that also helps you yourself build yourself up. Um,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know what it's like in New Zealand, but here in the United States, it's very common in the cancer community. When somebody gets that last chemo treatment, we have a bell ringing
Yeah,
ceremony.
they ring the bell. Yeah, yeah, we
Yeah.
do that here
Oh,
too. Yeah,
that was absolutely incredible.
yeah,
um, and the I asked the nurse, the head nurse, if I could have a couple of my granddaughters. They were younger than could come back into the cancer center. She said, "Dave, this is your day. You can have anybody you want." And
wow.
so I'm just trying to make that connection that when you do reach a level where you feel like now I'm winning, that's got to
Yeah.
be a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, you have to say, I mean, we celebrate every day that we're sober, but there's
Uh-huh.
definitely certain milestones that you're kind of, I never
Yeah.
thought I'd get to. So the most I'd ever done was 89 days. I didn't even get to 90.
Okay.
I was flying to Peru on the 90th day and me and my friend went to the airport and we had cocktails. So I didn't even make it to 90 days. So that always kind of pissed me off a little bit that I hadn't that I hadn't just managed one more day, but it is what it is. But when I finally got to 90 days, that was massive. And then 10 days later, you're in triple figures, and once you're in triple figures, you're in that for a long time. But it's,
Yeah.
then the next milestone is a year and then it's, blah, 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 and get to 1,000 days. That was incredible. I'm over 3 years now. I think it's, coming up 1,200 days, so nearly 1,200 days. But when I got to 1,000, I think that was bigger for me than when I got to 2 years or 3 years even. So I don't know, just joining the we call it the 4-digit club,
There
that
you
was just
go.
really special. So yeah,
Let me give you an idea. A friend gave me an idea that was also going through cancer. When we hit these anniversaries, we call them cancer versaries. You should start something called soberversaries or
Yeah,
something
we
like
do.
that.
We do. Yeah, yeah. Soberversaries. That's what they're called now. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Great. Um, it sounds like from me listening to you and again listening on your podcast that your life seems to be doing a whole lot better now. I'm sure your daughters appreciate it as well. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
do they jump in
That's
there
been
and
the biggest.
encourage you?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So there, I mean, like I said before, so when my middle daughter was 9, so that was the catalyst for me starting. So I think they were 10, 9, and 7 at that point. I'm actually considering I have asked them. They didn't say no, but I'm actually thinking about trying to get them on as guests on my podcast just for an how it was when they were growing, because my ex-husband and I, we used to drink a lot and, we'd go to friends' houses and then one of us would have to drive home with the kids, and I look back now and it's actually, I'm horrified. My sober me would never have done that, but drunk me didn't care, and so I was putting myself and my kids at risk. And,
Yeah.
it just breaks my heart now that I did that. But again, I can't change the past and luckily everything was fine. So, but, wanting to talk to them about what it was like knowing that they were going to be getting in a car with me or their dad that had been drinking, and then what it was like seeing me go through the 4 years of trying and never giving up. And I feel like that's given them a good lesson in just perseverance and resilience and just
Mhm.
never getting up. If you want something so badly, you just got to keep at it,
Yeah.
And so that's been a really good lesson for them to see me. And even I'd go weeks without drinking and then they'd walk in the room and I'd be pouring myself a glass of wine and that look of disappointment on their faces,
Oh.
it would just kill me. But it was
Mm-hmm.
just, it was part of the process. And then
Yeah.
looking at our relationship now, 3+ years sober and how my life has changed and their life has changed. And I'm 100% present for them every single day of the week. Like I'm just there for them all the time. And just, it would be really cool, I think, just to have like a chance for them to talk about those 3 stages. But it's a work in progress. They haven't said no, but they haven't said yes yet. So we'll see if
Okay.
that becomes an episode. But
Yeah.
I think that would be really cool. Yeah.
Now, in addition to your podcast, if I understand, you also do some workshops or coaching.
Yeah, so sober coach, yeah, so coaching, so I do one-on-one coaching and small group sessions. And then I'm also trying to um, set up something with businesses where I go in and do kind of half or full day workshops with their staff because I don't know the stats in America, obviously, but in New Zealand, I think the stat is $1.65 billion a year is lost in absenteeism and low productivity due to hangover, like people being hungover or drunk, So it's that's the cost to businesses. So having some sort of workshop where we can talk about that and then maybe having offering counseling that the company pays for. So if people have got an actual I've got a little bit of an issue here. Wouldn't mind talking to somebody, but I can't afford it. Well, the company pays for it and it's part of their well-being package. So that's something that's a kind of, again, work in progress at the moment. But I think it would just definitely be beneficial to,
Yeah.
I think a lot of employers are, are on that kind of well-being train of thought with their staff. If you don't look after your staff, then you're
Yeah.
going to lose your staff. So yes, so possibly that could be something that turns into something in the future.
Okay.
So
I
yeah,
think it would be great. You've got that presence about you that, as well as your experiences, I think you would be very, very good at it. Okay.
thank you. I
Yeah, I
think
don't
as
know what
well
the,
as sorry, I was going to just say like with my story, I'm not ashamed about my story. So I
yeah.
think that kind of I'm quite happy being vulnerable and telling people where I was at and because I truly believe that I am a success story and I feel like that vulnerability that comes from me enables people to relate and enables them to become vulnerable themselves. So I think it's it works, but yeah.
Yeah. Um, Yes. You are opening yourself up, but I don't think anybody's going to criticize you for that. I think they're going to appreciate you for that. So yeah, okay. That was kind of a question I had in my mind of how you might see the future, but yeah, you answered that very well. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of environmental things, that trigger, uh, but then you can work through those. I'm glad you said what you said about you're teaching your daughters about perseverance and how to fight for something. They've got to feel mom's fighting for me as well in that
Yeah,
regard. Okay,
yeah,
great. I
yeah.
have so enjoyed this. I really have. Uh,
Thank you.
and I'm looking forward if you get your daughters on there. I'm looking forward to hearing that. You're not, you've done 5 episodes, right?
Yeah, sixth one. I'm just editing it now. It was a guest interview with a lady from the UK.
Okay.
It's really good. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, you can use any part of this that you want to. Don't worry if you
Awesome.
want to. Yeah. Um, a friend told me when I first started podcasting, he said the way to, how is it? He said something about the way to go higher on the level of podcasting is to stay with it. And so I encourage you to do that. There'll be times when you feel like nobody's listening, and but hang in there, do it.
Yeah. Well,
They'll,
I think
it's going to kind of do this.
yeah, I think we connected because I just launched my first one and
Uh-huh.
I posted that I'd had 2 downloads, but I thought that they were my daughters. And then you
Yeah, I
messaged me
remember
from that.
that. I told my wife about that. We laughed about that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've had about I think just over 200 downloads now. So I mean, it's not massive by any stretch, but honestly, I didn't even know how to podcast 2 months ago, and now I've got 5 episodes out in the
There you
world,
go.
and people are listening to it, so it's cool. I mean, we'll do it for as long as my worst thing is that I wanted to do this about 6 months ago, and my brain was like, no, you have to wait until everything's perfect, and
Uh,
I'm teaching myself that you just got to go for it. And what's the worst that can happen? And if the worst is that I just stop doing it, then that's okay. So
yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
I'll
I've
keep
gone
doing it
back
while
and
I'm enjoying
listened.
it.
I've gone back and listened to some of my earlier episodes, and it's like, oh, that was terrible. But you just keep going. You'll learn. You'll
You
get
do.
better.
Yeah.
But I've
Yeah.
enjoyed it. I think you've done well with it. You have good presence on your podcast. You come through clear. The
Thank you.
passion in your voice is very evident. So I'm just giving you
Yeah.
some good feedback. I enjoy listening to it. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely something I'm passionate about because I think I really do think that people need to look at their relationship with alcohol a lot more than they are. And I think it's just something, I mean, so life changing, just changing stopping one thing can just have such a positive impact on every single aspect of your life. It's yeah, I'm happier and fitter and just everything just so much better than I ever was before. And I just from giving up one thing. So, I mean, it was hard, but yeah, so worth it, a million times worth it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, my friend, let me wrap up. You've given me some wonderful information. Thank you. And
No, thank you so much for letting me join. It's been awesome to meet you.
okay. Well, friends, thank you for joining Abby and I as together we journey to hope. I trust in some small way we've encouraged you to discover, sustain, or regain hope through this effort. I invite you to contact me if you have any questions or comments, or if you wish to share with me something you've experienced in your journey to hope. My email is info@ourjourneytohope.com. That's info@ourjourneytohope.com. And please share this podcast with someone whose hope is being challenged. I look forward to sharing more with you soon. Again, I'm Dr. Dave Layton, and thank you for listening. And until our next episode, remember, we give all glory to God our Father.